Now I've made those outside cuts, I'm going to make a few cuts in the middle just so it's quicker to chisel out the waste. Okay, so now time to put it together. Make sure your face sides are upwards. Welcome to this Woodworking Skills for Beginners video with me, Evelegh, where we're going to be cutting across half lap. The tools you'll need are a crosscut saw, a bevel edge chisel set, a mallet, a router plane, a marking knife, a marking gauge, a square, a rule, and a pencil. A half lap joint is very simple. You remove half the material from each piece and they interlock like a puzzle piece. These are commonly used in framework underneath chairs and tables. So the first thing you need to do is establish your face sides. So you want to pick the best looking grain for the top. I'm going to mark that with a pencil. Then I want this half lap to be right in the middle to make a cross half lap. So roughly I'm going to make a mark here with my knife. And what I'm going to do with a square, making sure I'm referencing off the face side, I'm going to draw that line gently at the beginning and then gradually getting deeper to ensure an accurate line. Once I have that line established, I'm going to bring this board, I'm going to go that way, back to that line, put my knife in the line and bring that board up. You want to be exact on the line. And instead of using a ruler and getting an inaccurate reading, I'm going to use the thickness of the timber itself. So then I know this mortise is going to be the exact right size. I'm going to get my knife and just make a mark on the other side. Going to get my square back, put my knife in that mark I just made, butt the square up and draw that line. Where you can, it's always a good idea using the material itself as your measurement than using a ruler. Because you can imagine if you're trying to follow these lines in the ruler, you can always be slightly off. But if I bring the workpiece up to it, butt it up to that line and literally reference the knife off the face of the material, you're going to get a much more accurate reading. So I'm going to do the same on this side. Okay. So now we have 2 marks on the top of this board and 2 marks on the bottom of this one. Now I'm going to get my marking gauge and roughly set it to the middle of this board. Now, it doesn't actually need to be bang on in the middle. And you can use a ruler for this if you want it to be as accurate as possible. This board is 40 millimeters long, so I'm going to mark 20. And then set my marking gauge on that point. The reason it doesn't need to be accurate is because when we're marking this line on both components, we're going to be referencing off the face edge from each side. And as long as we remove the material on top of the line on this board and on the bottom of the line on this board, it's going to match up. So I'm now going, before I mark the line, I'm just going to carry on these lines down with my knife so I know how wide I want that marking gauge line to be. It doesn't matter if you overshoot the middle because that's going to get hidden in the joint. Okay. So now we know the width of the mortise. I'm going to measure the depth with the marking gauge, referencing off that face side. Rolling that wheel gently to the line. You don't want to overshoot, otherwise you will see it in the final joint. Go gently at the beginning, and then the second pass you can go deeper. Now, this is the top because I've got my face side here, and this is the bottom. Even though my marking is on the underside, I still want to reference from this show face. So now if I hold these two pieces together and sight down it, I can see that they line up. And now it's time for the fun part, to remove the waste. So I'm going to clamp this in the vise, use a crosscut saw to make 2 cuts on the outside and then multiple cuts in the middle just to loosen that material. So for these outside cuts, I don't want to cut on the line because it's very likely I'm going to go over and I won't have a clean cut. So I'm going to go away about 1 millimeter, and then later on I'm going to pare back to the line with a chisel. Now I've made those outside cuts, I'm going to make a few cuts in the middle just so it's quicker to chisel out the waste. Okay, so now that's done, before I chisel out the waste, I'm going to do the other board while I'm here. So all the cuts are done. Now what I'm going to do is clamp the wood to the workbench and use a chisel and a mallet to hog away all that material. So I've removed most of the material, but now I want to clean up that bottom surface with a router plane. I'm going to put it in between these two bench dogs. If the workpiece was longer, I could keep it in the clamps, but if I were to do that with the clamps, I wouldn't have enough space for the router plane. So I'm going to set up this router plane so it's taking a very small shaving, and then keep on lowering it until I get to that line. Okay, so I've taken the bottom down to that marking gauge line. That's all smooth now. So now I'm going to move over to a chisel and pare back these two walls, halving the material each time until it's so little left I'd have to put the chisel in that marking gauge line and chop down. I'm going to start off with a small chisel, and then the final pass I'll move on to the biggest chisel I have, so then I can get the straightest line possible. I cut quite close to the line with the saw, so I only need to chisel it twice. Now for the next piece.
Bait. So.
Okay, so now I'm going to take the pieces over to the bench vise just to clean that up and do a slight undercut.
So.
So the half laps are now cut. I've added a slight undercut so there's no high spots. So let's give it a test fit. All right, that sounds pretty good. It's tight all the way around. What I'm going to do now is take it apart, add some glue, and then the joint's done. So I'm going to add glue to all the faces. If there are any gaps, the glue should help swell the wood and fill that in. You don't want to put too much on though, because there'll be a lot of glue squeezed out, then it's going to be hard to remove it later. Okay, so now time to put it together. Make sure your face sides are upwards. And it might be tighter with the glue on, so you should add a clamp. There we go. So I'm going to clean up the glue, let that sit overnight, and then we'll have a look at the final result. So that is the cross half lap. It's a very strong joint. There is no flex at all. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you learned something. Remember to like, share and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.